Welcome to American Catechism by Stab the Dragon Productions for a Whiskey Holiday Edition. Today is Friday, December 19th, 2025, and I'm coming to you from Fort Worth, Texas, where this morning it was 37 degrees and right now it's 65 degrees in the afternoon. So that's close to a 30-degree day. But today is not the whiskey holiday. That was yesterday, December 18th. It was the anniversary, the first birthday of the passing of the American Single Malt Act that made American single malts a legitimate thing, a legitimate form of whiskey in America, complete with rules and regulations. Rules and regulations, that's right. And the American whiskey industry actually wants rules and regulations. Sounds odd, but it actually is helpful. So we're going to discuss the American Single Malt Whiskey Act just a little bit, and then we're going to look at a single malt. There you go, Westland, their flagship single malt whiskey. All right, the American Single Malt Whiskey Act was passed December 18th of 2024 by the ATT, I don't know, abbreviations are messed up. The Alcohol and Tobacco Tax and Trade Bureau. And it's frequently abbreviated as the TTB, which makes no sense at all. TTB. But it's the Alcohol and Tobacco Tax and Trade. So that should be ATTTTT Bureau, whatever. But they set up this new whiskey official type thing. Okay, bourbon is a type of whiskey in America. Rye whiskey is a type of whiskey in America. And so now you also have the single malt whiskey. So that is now an official thing. And that's a good thing. So what are the rules to be a single malt whiskey? Well, first of all, single malt is what Scotch is famous for, right? There are some similarities between American single malts and Scotch, but there are some differences as well in the rules, okay? First rule that is in common with Scotch is single malt means malted barley alone, right? First rule. This has got no corn in it, no wheat, no rye, just malted barley. Second rule is it comes from only one distillery. So this is not a blend of several malts from several distilleries. Okay, that's going to be something else entirely. To be a single malt, it's got to be one distillery. There you go. They're single malt. Then it's got to be aged in oak casks. Now here's where some of the differences might be, is that the oak casks, I think, can be new or used, right? New or used. And it's got to be bottled at 80 proof at least. And there's a few other technical things about distilling proof and all that stuff, but I'm not going to get into all the nitty gritty. So there's no minimum aging requirement either in American single malts. Now that's different from Scotland. It's different from Ireland. It's different from Canada. All those other countries, you got a 3-year minimum, right? In America, because of our climate, you don't have that age requirement. It can be less than a year. I have seen some Texas whiskeys that were less than a year old that were way darker than a 20-year-old Scotch. Okay, that's what the American climate can do. And now, America's a big country, so you've got, the climate here in Texas that's very hot, sometimes humid, sometimes dry, sometimes very cold. And then with Westland, you're coming from Seattle. Well, Seattle's climate is actually quite a bit like Scotland. Okay, so it's very similar. But still, there's no aging requirement. There's no minimum age required for American single malt whiskeys. So that's clearly a difference as well. All right, so let's get into Westland. Just the facts. This is a 92 proof American single malt, and it is aged for just over 3 years. And this costs just below $60 for a 750 milliliter bottle. However, Total Wine's website has got a bottle that looks like this that they're saying is 700 milliliters for the same price. So I'm not sure if Westland is changing to 700 milliliter bottles, or if Total Wine got some kind of a deal. I don't know. My bottle is 750. So I hope they don't all switch to 700. That would be inflation through shrinkage, right? All right, tasting notes. The website says almond nougat, cream brulee, black tea, white flower petals. Really? What does a white flower petal taste like? I have no idea. Malted milk balls. Okay, think the candy Whoppers. Okay, I've had Whoppers recently, and I get that. Okay, you've got the malt, you've got charred funk. Now, this is me talking, not their website. Maybe some dark fruits like plums. Dang, this is just good. Okay, it's good. Tasting notes are varies according to your palate, right? My score was a 92. Letter grade for drinkability, an A+. Recommendation. I highly recommend this. It's an instant favorite. But at $60, this is a little bit on my expensive side, and as an intro to the American single malt world. Now, there are some clear similarities, like I said, with Scotch, but there's also differences, and that includes taste differences. American single malts really do taste different than Scotch single malts. But of the American single malts I've had about 10. This one is the closest to something from Scotland. And I'm going to look at the climate of the Pacific Northwest and say that may be why. But I would say give this a try so you can experience it and try to figure out the differences between this and Scotch. You know, you get your favorite bottle of Scotch and get this one side by side and see what you think. Okay, some details. History first. Westland Distillery began in 2011 in Seattle, Washington. It was started by Matt Hoffman and Emerson Lamb, but is now sadly owned by the French company Rémy Cointreau since 2016. So they started it in 2011 and sold it 5 years later. Really? Now, this whiskey's won a lot of awards over the years. Too long to list, but you know, this is rightfully one of the prize-winning whiskeys. In the summer of 2025, this year, just a few months ago, this company made headlines by being the victims of a sophisticated crime. They had a truck that got loaded up with their whiskeys with fake paperwork, and about 12,000 bottles or $1 million worth of whiskey disappeared. So far, the crime has not been solved. What the heck do you do with a truckload of Westland whiskey? Throw a big party? I don't know. I mean, this is F. Scott Fitzgerald territory going on here. I don't know. Great Gatsby, maybe. Who knows? All right, so history, 4 out of 5 points. Bottle, label, and marketing. Well, this bottle, again, I told you this is a 750. It's a bit plain bottle, right? It's just kind of a round circle square. I mean, it's even sides. It's round, clear glass. It's got a twist-on plastic cap. So it's a really very plain bottle. Nothing fancy about it at all. No embossing. No nothing. It's got an attractive label, though. I like the label. It's got kind of a blue-gray and red and white color scheme in the shape of a diamond, but the diamond is overlaid on a rectangular map of some kind. The map has got gradients on it indicating like it's a terrain map of some kind, right? Showing elevation and stuff. So that's what it looks like to me. I don't know. You get it and you can figure it out. Then on the back, it's just, you know, got the hoo-ha statement and all the legal mumbo-jumbo. So, what does the hoo-ha statement say? American Oak Single Malt. A flagship malt is the core expression of a distillery's house style. All right, the word flagship is not on here. If you go to their website, same stuff, different label says flagship. Total Wine's website, theirs had flagship on it. Mine just says American Oak, Westland American Single Malt. So different labels are out there, but it's the same stuff. This is the flagship whiskey, right? Their basic line, which is why I got this one. When I try something from a new distillery, I want to get the basic edition as much as I can. So anyway, the distillery's got a few videos out for marketing purposes that are very well done and informative. They give you a ton of good info about their whiskey and their distilling methods. And that was actually, I'll talk about that here in a little bit for composition. So the bottle and label, fairly plain. Marketing, it's highly talked about a lot. And then if you go looking for it, you can find some good videos on it. But for a plain bottle, though, 4 out of 5. Appearance of this whiskey is pretty dark, right? For just over 3 years in the glass. I mean, that's really fairly dark. It's the upper reaches of a 3. I'm giving it a 3, but I mean, that's the upper reaches of a 3. It's close to a 4. Composition. Again, this is an American single malt, aged for at least 3 years, coming in at 92 proof. It is grain to glass Washington State. So when you watch the videos from Westland, they emphasize that they started their whiskey distilling by building off of the local craft breweries in the Pacific Northwest. So their approach to barley and fermentation is different, they're saying, from Scotch. And plus their distilling equipment is more modern and up to date. And so it's really, they emphasize that their techniques are rooted in the beer industry and high tech. They focus on the different types of barley they use, and it's all grown in the Pacific Northwest. And so the land and the climate, they say, is perfect for growing the best barley in the world. I've lived in the Pacific Northwest. I was in the Army up there at Fort Lewis, and it rains 300 days out of the year. You might get a week of warm weather in August, or something like that, but it's very much a cool, wet climate. Now, they use even the wood from their barrels as a type of oak grown in the Pacific Northwest. And of course, their water comes from the Cascade Mountains, the glaciers, the snowmelt. So the details that they provide in their video on their website about this whiskey, that's really pretty darn good. And so they really tell you about the details of making this. And so for their clarity and transparency, I'm giving them a rare 15 out of 15 for composition. Nose. This is a rich, inviting nose. Malty, definitely. But typical for American single malts, you have this touch of funk, of wood, leather, tobacco. Now, the website says custard filling. Really? Smells like custard filling? I don't know. Marionberry compote. Marionberries grow up there in the Pacific Northwest, and I've had that before. How to describe marionberries? I don't know. Similar to blackberries would be, what I would say. Maple brittle. I get a little bit of maple. Toasted marshmallows. Not so sure about that. Maybe. Still, this is a very good nose. I mean, this is very inviting. I mean, 9 out of 10. And it's that funk that reaches out to me. Taste. This is delicious for sure. Now, I do see the similarities with Scotch single malts. Something about the barley has a similar taste, whatever the country of origin, it seems like. Now, I'm a bit of a novice with single malts. Again, I've tried about 9 or 10 single malts now, and I seem to detect a clear difference between American and Scottish single malts. But it's hard to describe that difference. I'd really have to set this side by side with a Scotch and argue with it for a little bit and see. But I'm describing the difference as funk, right? If you've watched my videos on Texas whiskeys, you're used to me using that word. It is the interaction with the American oak and the climate that produces a different kind of funk in American whiskeys. And so that's what I'm tasting here. Very noticeable in Texas whiskeys and Colorado whiskeys. Stranahan's or 10th Mountain, they have the funk, right? Now, this is not as funky as Texas or Colorado single malts, but it's still there. And I love it. I mean, that's really my favorite profile. And when the website says almond nougat or cream brulee black tea, I do get the malted milk balls and the whoppers, okay? I get that and the charred funk. I think I get some kind of dark fruits like plums. But this is just good. 24 out of 25 for taste. That's exceptionally high for me. Mouthfeel, burn, and finish. It's a pretty creamy mouthfeel. You do get a slight burn in the mouth, but nothing going up. No inappropriate alcohol burn. It's a very appropriate for the proof, even probably a bit less than I expected. The finish is long. It lingers with that funk and malt flavor. The mouth tingle sticks around for a while too. So for mouthfeel, burn, and finish, 14 out of 15. Neat or mixer. Now this is amazing neat. It's got enough proof and character for ice should you choose to use it. And while I'm positive this would make a great cocktail, at this price point, I just don't do cocktails. I mean, I'm sure it would be great, but not for me. 5 out of 5 for neat or mixer. Price, value, and availability. Total Wine had this for $57.49, but again, their bottles were listed as 700 milliliter, and it also said flagship. Goody Goody, where I bought this, is $57.59, and this is $7.50. Specs did not have this variety. They had one of the other more expensive varieties, but they didn't have this basic one. The website for Westland says $59.99, so I'm getting this for just below manufacturer suggested retail price. So I think this is a very solid, good price, great price for the quality, great value. Availability is good but not great, apparently. So 9 out of 10 for price, value, and availability. Bonus points. This is a new favorite for sure, but this flagship edition is likely the only edition I can afford. So this starts at just below $60, and their other editions go up from there. I used to live in Washington State, so this does remind me of those days in the Army, Fort Lewis. So, there's an emotional attachment here. 5 out of 5 points for bonus, giving me a total score of 92 and a letter grade of A+. Analysis and recommendation. So I've now tried, I think, at least 9 American single malts, maybe 10, and I've detected a trend. There's this certain similarity with Scotch single malts that's common to the barley, but there's this big difference between American single malts and Scotch that's hard for an amateur like me to define. In general, though, it seems like American single malts all have this certain boldness, and it's heavily influenced by the wood, much more so than Scotch. Scotch seems to be tamer compared to American single malts in this regard. So those differences really are big, and they set these whiskeys apart to two very distinguishable styles, Scotch and then American. However, of the American single malts that I've tasted, this is the most Scotch-like that I've tasted. This whiskey is an immediate new favorite. Now, I say that a lot, but I would love to do a taste test between this one and Stranahan's and maybe a Balcones single malt. So if you're interested in trying American single malts, This would be a great place to start, but again, it's a bit pricey for a beginner at almost 60 when Balcones Lineage is another great whiskey. And that comes in below 40. So you're looking at $36 for Lineage. So, if you're new to this type of whiskey, you can try this if you want to, if you got the money. But otherwise, Balcones is a little bit cheaper. In conclusion, the next episode of American Catechism, I hope to be tomorrow, and I hope to look at the United States Space Force because Saturday, December 20th, is their birthday anniversary, 1-year birthday. So then next week is Christmas week, so we're going to start a short series on Canadian whiskeys for the cold months of January and into February. And then we've got a whole lot more history coming up in January as well. So for now, this is Stab the Dragon Productions for American Catechism out here.